Hi, this is Anna Imagination with the Ethical Asshole, and I am your host, the Salty Bitch. So I'm back again. We're going to take this a little deeper into all of this. In order to do summation mathematics, you require integrated mathematics because people do not know about integrated mathematics. They did not know how to apply integrated mathematics to summation mathematics, which is why math teachers are not good, which is why 40% of the population struggles with mathematics. Just a moment. I think the statistic was 60%. I can't remember if it was 40 or I know it was divided 40-60 and I can't remember which way was which. So I'm just going to go devil's advocate and assume it was, is this devil's advocate? 40% of the population struggles with mathematics. A lot of people struggle with mathematics. Almost 50. That's a lot of people. So in mathematics, in integrated mathematics, we have something with statistics that we refer to as common denominators and anomalies. When you have truth, you have a common denominator. This is integrated mathematics, which is all foundation in logic. Summation mathematics is what you learn in high school algebra math and going forward. This is why it's so vital that we learn linguistics and logic, is because in linguistics and logic, you learn about integrated mathematics. You do not learn about summation mathematics there. You learn about the tools that are going to be needed for you to do summation mathematics. So this is where, in order to do things like, well, summation mathematics, 1 + 1 = 2, you're going to need integrated mathematics. Integrated mathematics is the order of operations. It is your PEMDAS. It's where PEMDAS comes from. PEMDAS uses integrated mathematics in order to build equations, to form equations, because what they are doing is aligning the operations according to the integration sequence. The integration sequence is in everything. It is one formula, and this formula is everywhere. Once you learn the integrated formula, which is literally the life formula, the evolution, the creation formula, it is the love formula. It is everywhere. Once you learn this one formula, you're going to see it everywhere, and you're going to go, oh my God, how could we have functioned without this? And I'm like, I know, right? Integrated mathematics has one formula, and it is only the point of integration, which I call Plato's point, disintegration, integration, Plato's point. And that's all of it. That is literally all of it. Now, it might take a very long time for that disintegration to happen before the integration happens, and then you get back into the integrated point of Plato's point. But nevertheless, everything runs off of this process. This is the repeated pattern that's everywhere. It's in everything. It is what the Fibonacci sequence is. The Fibonacci sequence is the disintegration part of this four-part formula. So when you are building a formula, when you are building an equation, you are actually getting it to fit inside this formula of Plato's point, disintegration, integration, Plato's point. The equation is that 1 + 1 = 2. You are actually looking for the equilibrium. So this is going back over into the summation aspect of it, where you have the integration for, or the equilibrium. This is where you're looking in summation mathematics, where you want to make sure that 1 + 1 over here is equal to 2. And that's that fulcrum point again, where we have that ledger line, you have your point of balance, and you want to make sure that it's balanced. So this is what we're doing in summation mathematics. Now, in order to know if you should add or subtract or divide or multiply, use parentheses or exponents. Now, that's integrated mathematics. That is knowing which parts are going to be required in dependence and independence for dependence or independence on the predecessor successor, which is why you have an order of operations, is because the number for addition and subtraction is dependent upon you making sure that the division and the multiplication has taken place, which is dependent upon you having the parentheses. This is all part of that sequence. And the reason why you're doing that is because you are actually going through the generations of dependence within the life sequence relative to the point of origin. Now, there are 2 points of origins. You have your first point of origin, which is your beginning point, and then you have your integration point, which is your end point, and that sets off something different called your integration point, or your point of ignition. It's literally your integration point of ignition, and that becomes the catalyst for the next sequence. So think of a line of dominoes. In fact, the concept of dominoes and chain reactions is integrated mathematics. So every collapsed domino is dependent upon the collapse of the predecessor of the collapsed domino, integrated mathematics. So you have your catalyst, said marble, that sets off the chain reaction. The marble is that point of origin. It's the origin. So it sets off and the chain reaction begins. The chain reaction goes all the way through. You see the sequence from predecessor to sequence. It gets to that last line. Now, this is where integrated mathematics really gets interesting. When it gets to the last line, it integrates and it becomes a new component, an integrated whole, and it becomes something new. Let's call it a piece of clockwork. It sets off this one thing and that ignites the next chain reaction sequence, and it literally elevates you to the next level, and then you go through the next run of chain reaction. So imagine you want to light an explosion at the end of this chain. Now, you could just walk up and ignite that explosion, but let's say that you want a chain reaction to set it off. Let's say you only want that explosion to go off after and only if and only if the entire first generation of sequences has occurred. That way, it is dependent upon chain reaction generation 1 occurring. So you set off the first generation, you have your marble, you set off the chain reaction, it goes through the chain reaction, it gets to that last point and it sets it off, it ignites it. That ignites it, setting off a next run of generation chain reactions, and it goes run through. This is what we are doing in the game of Mousetrap. We are playing integrated mathematics in the game of Mousetrap. We are setting up all these different chain reactions, and we are seeing which sequencing they take place where everything is independent or dependent upon a predecessor. So when we are doing something like PEMDAS, parentheses, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, subtraction, addition, subtraction, what we are doing is we are looking at the integrated sequence of the order of operations in which to do our summation mathematics of 1 plus 1 equals 2 for equilibrium and balance on that fulcrum. So that is the difference between, or that is what we get when we require integrated mathematics in order to do summation mathematics. Because in order to conduct certain things, we have to be aware of whether or not there are components that are common denominators and or anomalies. Now we're getting into integrated mathematics. We have to ensure that we are working with a point of origin and we are integrating to a point. We need to know where we are on this trail of disintegration or integration. It is really, really important to tell if you are integrating or disintegrating. Now, here is why it matters. Because your mental health and your subconscious mind runs 100% on integrated mathematics, not summation mathematics. Integration mathematics is 100% what runs our entire subconscious mind. So setting off a catalyst, understanding that marble point, and then watching the disintegration and then the integration occur. When your mom gets pregnant, she has a integrated mathematics occurring inside of her that sets off cell mitosis. So now that one cell, so you get the fertilized egg. The fertilized egg is a fertilized cell. The cell then divides, and now you have 2 cells, then you have 4 cells, then 8, and 16, then 32. That is integrated mathematics. That is the disintegration step. That is actually stage 2 of the disintegration process or of the entire life cycle. This is life propagation. This is, like I said, the life formula. So then after you are born, the point of your birth, now that is the point in which you begin to integrate again. Are we all listening? Because this is really, really important. This is where integration mathematics now crosses over into mental illness. During the process of your cell disintegration, this is the part where your cells are actually cell mitosis. It's all splitting inside of you. During the part of the disintegration process is cell mitosis. This is where biology gets weird. But basically, if everything develops properly, you'll be fine. But if it doesn't happen, that's when you get those mutations where you have birth defects. It's because there was disruption occurring out of order inside of this particular process. Evolution cannot exist during the disintegration integration process. It can only exist on the outside at the points of origins or the integration points. That is where it needs to occur. But during development, you have a person has a brain development or a birth defect because the evolution process occurs during this process and not inside of it or on the outside. So when you have birth, what ends up happening is you are literally integrating back into your next point of self. That is what you are supposed to be doing, is you are supposed to discover who you are by taking this person who has all the undefined components of the self, and you have to define and integrate all of the components of the self back into an integrated whole of the self. This is why we go to school. But this is not what is happening when we go to school. By the time you are 2 years old, your parents and society has interfered with this process. And as a result, you are no longer integrating your undefined components of the self into the defined integrated components of the self. And as a result, that creates an offshoot. And now you have a cancer cell equivalent of the integration process. So what ends up happening is mental illness. The mental illness then becomes its own disintegration and integration process, mutated because now it's reversed because it was done out of order. And as a result, you can now track precisely where you are in the disintegration integration sequence of how far your mental illness is based upon the sequence and the traits you have for your mental illness. Psychologists are following the wrong line away from the point of origin, which is why they can't figure out mental illness. When they realize this and they start looking at the point of origin, this is how I figured this out, is when you look at the point of origin and you start integrating back, you actually are undoing the trauma. And this is what you do when you are undoing your trauma, is you turn around and you look at your point of origin and then you reverse engineer yourself back because you are disintegrating because you incorrectly integrated. So now you need to correctly disintegrate and put yourself back to the point of origin, back to the point of birth. And then from there, you can re-knit and rebuild from there. Now, there's a way you can cheat to get around this, which is what I did. Instead of reverse engineering everything, you just go back to the beginning, to the point of your birth, and you just rebuild from that point. There's a couple logical threads, which is exactly the sequencing that took place that disrupted and that gave you that 1955 offshoot. So if you just go back and you intercept the logical code that occurred when you were like 2 or 3, it completely resets all of you. So instead of you refrogging all of your knitting, all you have to do is pull one thread and the whole thing unravels and you're fine. So I teach you how to unravel. It completely disintegrates, right back, resets you, so you don't have to do all of the shadow work. You get right back to that beginning core point, and then you can rebuild your new line from 1985 as you were supposed to be integrating from that point. That's where you continue to build your components, and as you define your components, you can integrate your components back into your point of origin. Now, once you are integrated and you have the defined self, that is when you should look for a family. That is when you should start looking for your business. Actually, you should already have your business at this point, but you should be able to be prosperous at this point. This is where you should be looking for your partner. This is where you should start to be settling down. This takes about 24 years total if your parents do not interfere with the process. Now, if they interfere with the process, you're not going to get around to this until you're like 45 to 65 years old, which is now a problem. So you parents really need to become aware of this really, really, really soon so we can preserve this entire process, which is what the learning journey of the discovered self is. The learning journey of the discovered self is the Mother Nature's process of integration, disintegration back into your defined components of the defined self into the integrated point of the self. It's really easy. It's really simple. Parents just need to not interfere with it and learn how to preserve it. But in order to do that, they have to become aware. So when you are looking at summation mathematics, you have 2 components happening inside. You have 2 lines occurring inside summation mathematics. The first one is, are you looking at that scale of equilibrium? Are you looking at that fulcrum point? Or are you looking at quantity and value? Now, when you are given something in mathematics, all those problems that you had to solve and all those word problems, what they were doing was they were teaching you 4 types of mathematics, not types of mathematics, 4 tools in mathematics, 4 tools in one type of mathematics. They wanted you to be able to determine what grouping or what tool was going to be required for which one of these. So really what you needed to do was first, and this is what they never told you, which is why mathematics was so hard, is you needed to figure out if you were trying to do integration mathematics, which is your word problems, that's integrated mathematics, or if you were doing summation mathematics. Summation mathematics is looking at ratios, looking at that scale, or looking at summation and quantity, doing your calculations. But without knowing anything about integrated mathematics, that made word problems really, really hard because we were all trying to do integrated mathematics without even hearing about integrated mathematics, which made it all really confusing. Not to mention, it requires understanding of word, linguistic, and logic, which is why word problems have words in them, is because it is integrated mathematics. Integrated mathematics is 100% word-based, which is why you need logic, because you can't do integrated mathematics without it. Thank you so much. May the kindest of words always find you.